Sorry, I'm a little late. I was arranging seashells on the beach in Miami to spell out a rhetorical flourish against the President of the United States. So the indictment against me, I guess, is a year away because it'll take a whole year for them to figure out that I have a First Amendment right and expression to criticize the occupant of the White House, and it doesn't rise to the level of a threat of violence or death against the President of the United States. You know how I know that? Besides the fact I went to law school, because there's a case from the 1960s called Watson versus the United States that sets the foundation for First Amendment expression to separate it from real threats, actionable threats with willful intent against the president. And when I get done talking about that, you'll understand why James Comey selling seashells down by the Outer Banks of North Carolina seashore does not rise to the level of a crime. And I don't even think the Department of Justice believes it does, nor do I believe the FBI believes it does. Fresh off the case of having put almost the entire order of succession for the presidency into one room in an unsecure room, Kash Patel is on the scene. Don't we all feel better knowing that our security of the United States and our national security is in the hands of Kash Patel, who, oh my God, what? This is how I come on the air. I got to come on the air talking about seashells arranged at an Instagram thing. I got to talk about my restaurant experience as a child and how even I know that the term 86, which is the basis for an indictment against the former director of the FBI, James Comey, this is the best it can do. That 86 something doesn't mean to assassinate it. It means to remove it from the menu or the list. It comes from the restaurant business. When I yelled out 86 the onion rings, I didn't mean take them in the back and shoot them. I meant take it off the list and don't sell them any longer. That's what 8647 means. It means remove. Doesn't mean kill. And the fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice took a year to investigate a 1-second posting on Instagram of a photo that James Comey took of somebody else's shell collection tells you everything you need to know, both about the legitimacy of the indictment and the foolhardiness of those in power. They're too smart by half. It's also a demonstration of remember the game you used to play as kids, Limbo? How low will Todd Blanche go? How low will he limbo in order to get this effing job that he obviously covets, like he's Gollum on Lord of the Rings? I'm waiting. I'm really waiting for one day Todd Blanche to slip in a hot mic moment and go, "The precious, the precious." He will stoop. He once told people, because it leaked out in the Department of Justice, that there are just certain things he won't stoop down low enough to do. It's beneath him. Nothing is beneath you, Mr. Blanche. Not based on the press conference you gave today about James Comey. But in a moment of Zen, can we take a moment of Zen here on the intersection? I'll welcome you to the intersection, the award-winning intersection, the popular People's Voice award-winning intersection on the Webbies. Let's have a moment of Zen, shall we? There is no way on God's green earth that indictment will survive a motion to dismiss, both on its own terms, and it's a page and a half long. We'll figure out how to put it up in a minute, and the actual Instagram post that's at issue. It's a page long. They went to the Eastern District of North Carolina, out in the Outer Banks, to get this indictment. Okay, washed up on shore. And also a motion for vindictive prosecution. And if I were the lawyers for James Comey, including Pat Fitzgerald, former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Illinois out of Chicago, I would be lighting a candle. I would be getting down on my knees and thanking whatever God I prayed to, or no God, that this was the indictment that they finally brought. It is laughable. But it wasn't brought because anybody thinks they're actually going, oh, there it is. It wasn't brought because anybody in the Department of Justice actually thinks that they're going to get a conviction on this or that it will survive motion practice. It was brought to put James Comey on the hot seat, right? To have the pound of flesh extracted, to have the headlines read, James Comey indicted over seashells. Oh, yeah. That's what thank you. Leave that up for a minute. First of all, it'd be one thing if he threatened to pick up the seashells and throw them from North Carolina towards Donald Trump in Washington. Even that would not be an actionable threat against the life of the president. Now, it would be different if the photo that let's play this out for a moment, shall we? If the photo was of let's just spitball this around a little bit. James Comey, right, with a knife, sharpening a spear, and making a comment about Donald Trump. Okay, James Comey cleaning a gun, a long arm, a weapon of some sort, and making a comment about the president. Even that, I think it's not quite there yet, because the First Amendment allows for certain types of expression. But a shell formation that somebody else did, that he posted and said was an interesting shell formation, that's a call to arms. This is the best they got coming out of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Shouldn't they be spending time evaluating the lack of security measures that put Donald Trump and the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 12 in the succession to the presidency in jeopardy? Shouldn't they be doing that instead of this and wasting our time and money? Now, fortunately, first, before I get to James Comey, who as soon as we started doing our text chain at Midas about it, I was like, don't worry, after the press conference, there'll be a Comey posting in social media about defending himself. I'm sure that's coming. Before I play that, and it is good, let me first show you Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche trying to convince the American people that they broke the case of the seashells with a tremendous. This is what the FBI is reduced to. Play that clip, and then we'll play Kash Patel. Play it.
District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts. The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count 2, same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years. So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody.
Yeah, we didn't get to the exact clip I wanted. I wanted the one about the FBI and doing their job. But let's play Kash Patel, because I think that one is the clip about how hard work the FBI did to crack the case of James Comey and the shells. Go.
As you heard from the Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney, former FBI Director James Comey has now been indicted for 2 felony counts. While many of you may read this indictment and view this matter as a simple investigation, it is the farthest thing from that. Every single investigation this FBI and our partners at the Department of Justice undertake, especially those that involve the threats to harm or hurt or even kill individuals, whether they hold public office or civilians in our country, are met with the same measure of investigative prowess and tools and personnel in partnership with the Department of Justice as anyone else. As the U.S. Attorney indicated, James Comey will be afforded every matter of due process under the United States Constitution. And as the Attorney General indicated, this has been a case that's been investigated over the past 9, 10, 11 months. These cases take time. Our investigators work methodically. They are career agents, career prosecutors who work these matters. They call the balls and strikes in the field as they see fit, pursuant to the facts of the case and the law. They took that information and made a presentment to a grand jury, a jury of peers in the district in which the alleged crime took place. And that grand jury spoke, and that grand jury returned a 2-count indictment against James Comey.
Yeah, it's a hard investigation to break the case of the social media post that he immediately, James Comey, took down and apologized for when he saw that people were misinterpreting it, because he never associated 86, nor do I, with a threat against the president. Now let's put this. Let's before I get to why this is a losing indictment at the indictment level under Supreme Court precedent. Let's give James Comey his time, right? Because he's had his life attempted to be destroyed, although he stands vigilant, he stands strong in the face of these allegations and attacks. Let's play James Comey.
Well, they're back. This time about a picture of seashells on a North Carolina beach a year ago. And this won't be the end of it. But nothing has changed with me. I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid. And I still believe in the independent federal judiciary. So let's go. But it's really important that all of us remember this is not who we are as a country. This is not how the Department of Justice is supposed to be. And the good news is we get closer every day to restoring those values. Keep the faith.
Right. Let's go. I said that last time, and they went. And just to catch everybody up, Donald Trump used a novice prosecutor who's been fired and no longer with the Department of Justice named Lindsay Halligan to go after Letitia James, New York Attorney General, for mortgage fraud, and to go after James Comey in the Eastern District of Virginia for purportedly lying to Congress back in 2020. She did it with about 5 days to go on the statute of limitations, and subsequently a federal judge tossed her as illegally appointed as the U.S. attorney and tossed her indictments along with it. Now, we thought they were going to go after James Comey to try to re-indict him or fix the indictment from Lindsay Halligan's time, but they're really out of time, and I think that's why they felt like, well, we better come up with something else. Then my eyes sort of turned to Florida, where I live, and District of Columbia, because Joe DeGeneva, an 81-year-old Rudy Giuliani type, an election denier that Donald Trump has hired to go after all of his political enemies and perceived critics, is leading the investigation now about the grand conspiracy to allege that Donald Trump didn't legitimately win in 2016 or didn't legitimately lose in 2020. And that's why they're going after James O'Brennan, the former CIA director. And we heard Comey too. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe it'll come out of DC or out of Miami. But they went back to the seashell Instagram post. Now, there is a case that is the definitive case in this area. It's called Watson versus the United States. Mark Elias and I joined Mark Elias for an interview for Democracy Docket yesterday. It'll be up tomorrow. And then Mark's going to return the favor and be my guest next Tuesday on The Intersection. Mark and I talked about the First Amendment in this particular case, and he reminded me about Watson, because you learn it in law school and when you cover First Amendment things, but it particularly goes to expressions of violence against the president. In Watson, he had been drafted, and he didn't want to be drafted. So he made a joking comment, and people laughed at it at the time, that if they hand him a rifle, the first person he was going to put in the sights of the rifle was going to be Lyndon Johnson, LBJ. Okay? Now, this is after we know that LBJ took over for the presidency after a rifle took down and assassinated JFK. So, poor humor. I don't know. Jimmy Kimmel's getting excoriated for a lot less, for sure. And so that went up to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court said there is bedrock principles of First Amendment expression. And unless this is actionable, like he took steps or did plans or did something in the statement that indicated an intent to do grievous harm to a president, making a joke in that context doesn't rise the level of a threat against the president. The indictment was so weak that they didn't even bother publishing a picture of the seashell formation, because it would make this look more ludicrous than it already does. Although they do say in it that he did knowingly make a threat to take the life of and inflict bodily harm upon the president by posting a photograph on the internet, Instagram, which depicted seashells arranged in a pattern which a reasonable recipient who is familiar with the circumstances would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to the president of the United States. You folks here in my audience are reasonable recipients of media and information. Did you think that James Comey was going to or was trying to get other people to assassinate the president of the United States? Come on. I don't care how big the flag lapel pin for Todd Blanche is, or how many or Kash Patel can wear a 4-piece suit. I don't care. Okay, these are buffoons and clowns who will one day have their law licenses. Yes, Kash Patel has a law license taken away from them and probably be indicted themselves for obstruction of justice and for abuse of power. They can't come soon enough for the rest of us, but certainly that's where we're at. But that moment is then I want you to hold on to is that this indictment is not going to survive, I don't think, the motion to dismiss or vindictive prosecution, especially when it's laid out for the George W. Bush appointee, who's now the new judge, and to remind the judge of how we got here. The first attempt at an indictment and what happened, their failure to get an indictment, their failure to be able to get an indictment, and now scrambling to indict on anything, even what wouldn't even constitute jaywalking, let alone a crime. Because for a crime, under Title 18 of our code, you have to have every crime. There's a couple of exceptions, but 99% of the crimes, you have to be able to show as a prosecutor that there has been willful intent, mens rea. Also, we sometimes refer to it in the vernacular as criminal mind. What's the criminal mind? You can do lots of things. If you don't have the willful intent, it's not a crime. That's the major distinction here. And speaking of not being able to take a joke, and good news, everybody, I'm glad you're here. In about 15 minutes or so, Katie Fang of the Katie Fang News Channel, close friend of mine, fellow Midas contributor, who filed a landmark breakthrough lawsuit, the first lawsuit filed under the Epstein Transparency Act to hold the government accountable, came out of the pen and mind of the lawyering of Katie Fang. And I want her to join me to talk to our audience about it and about the attacks on the media. You know, we got ABC and the Federal Communications Commission and Jimmy Kimmel back in the news because this administration can't take an effing joke. And it is a joke, okay? Just as when Laura Loomer sued Bill Maher and had her defamation case kicked out last week because it was nothing more than rhetorical hyperbole for Bill Maher to suggest that Laura Loomer was effing Donald Trump. No reasonable person would believe that that is a statement of actual fact, not when the person saying it is a stand-up comic during his monologue on his comedy show. I mean, I don't really love Bill Maher, but I'll defend with my last dying breath his right to say the things that he's saying. So that case got kicked. Jimmy Kimmel, who 2 days before, let's get the timeline right, everybody. 2 days before the White House Correspondents' Dinner, he does a fake roast because in order to appease the fearless leader and the thin-skinned leader, the media in the room decided, the White House correspondents decided they weren't going to have a comedian roasting him. They're going to have a magician. Here's a trick. Make Donald Trump disappear. How's that? So Kimmel did his own roast. And, he had a good joke about the age difference between Melania Trump and Donald Trump, which two days before an assassination attempt is funny. About she looks like a blushing, expectant widow. Okay, we all get it because Melania is, let's just, well preserved. I don't know what her beauty secrets are. Could involve formaldehyde. And Donald Trump, we see the age gap. That's the joke. It's not about take him out. It's not about 86 the president. And yet Melania, is she back in the news a lot? For a person who abdicated all responsibility to be a first lady and was derelict in her duties, she's back. She must be bored. Something, I don't know what's going on. Sale week or fashion week in New York something must be going on. Her favorite restaurant is under renovation because she's hanging out a lot in Washington. She takes the podium with that angry press conference. What made her so angry about demanding justice for Melania Trump about the child sex trafficking ring. Oh yeah, and the victims too. Yeah. And now it's, Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, he should be fired. And then right on cue, after Donald Trump goes after Jimmy Kimmel for the joke and Melania goes after it, here's what their communications director, Stephen Chung, this is a guy that I don't even think really exists. I think he's AI. Here's what he writes. This is the communications director for the President of the United States. Ready, everybody? Jimmy Kimmel is a shit human being. For making a disgusting joke about assassinating the president. It was not a joke about assassinating the president. It was a joke about the age difference. And nobody before, if that tragedy averted hadn't happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you would not even be able to make that leap. And then doubling down on it, ABC needs to fire him immediately and shun him for life. Oh, all right on cue. Brendan Carr crawls out of his crypt. Former FCC lawyer, now chairman, wrote the chapter in Project 2025 about the FCC. This is the guy that never got any attention in high school, and now everybody's got to pay attention to him. He decides, since he lost his original leverage, when Jimmy Kimmel made the joke, made a reference to Charlie Kirk and made a joke, and the FCC and Trump had a lot of leverage because they had a major TV station merger, Tegna being part of it, with 300 local stations hanging in the balance. And a lot of them were ABC affiliates. And so they put pressure on the FCC, or the other way around. The FCC put pressure on them. Oh, you got to get Kimmel off the air. We're not going to improve your transaction, your merger. And that led to a resolution with Kimmel, who got off the air for a week. But now they've lost because that transaction sort of went through. I mean, a judge is keeping an eye on it, but it sort of went through. So all that's left is to squeeze ABC by its 8 television stations that it owns. See, back in the old timey times, the broadcaster, ABC, CBS, NBC, they had affiliates that were owned separately, except they kept some flagship ones. So I think I'll ask this about Katie too. WABC in New York, KABC in California, I think they're owned by the actual ABC, meaning Disney. The rest are owned, like wherever you live, the rest are owned by local TV station owners. So now Brendan Carr goes on Stephen Miller's wife's podcast. That's the new go-to podcast. And it ain't winning a Webby Award anytime soon, but it is the go-to podcast. If you want to get your message out without challenge on the Trump administration, you go to the Katie Miller Show. Hey, everybody. And he said he threatens ABC again. You got 8 licenses, so we're going to have to put them up for renewal early, unless you get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. No, we're not all right with the Trump administration trying to crush First Amendment dissent. And in the second go around, 16, 17 months into this administration, I am glad to see that the media is fighting back. And ABC, you should take the lead of people like Katie Fang, who are suing the Trump administration instead of the other way around. See, when you settled with Trump because George Stephanopoulos, during an interview of E. Jean Carroll, called Trump a rapist instead of a sex abuser and paid $15 million, you thought that was going to be the last shakedown, right? Nah, that was last year's tribute. Now he's got a lot of bills. He's trying to build a 50-story building in Miami to house his library. He needs more money. And you already bent the knee once, ABC and Disney. Let's do it again. So that's what's going to happen, right? It's going to be a big check. It's going to have to get paid. And if Jimmy ends up in the ash heap because of it, it's going to be up to our audience and people here at Midas and other places to platform him again. His career is not over, just like nobody's career is over that's joined Midas Touch. I'm so glad you're all here. Coming up after the first break, I got Katie Fang. This is a case of dog bites man. No, man bites dog. That's it. Sorry, Katie. Man bites dog. because we finally have a member of the media suing Donald Trump instead of the other way around. I'm so tired of having to report about this reporter and this subpoena and this indictment and this defamation case. Screw that. Let's get on the other side of the V with a suit about the Epstein Transparency Act led by journalist, legal commentator, lawyer, friend of the show, friend in real life, Katie Fang. So stick around. First, we're going to do a quick break here on The Intersection. Thank everybody who voted that got The Intersection the People's Voice Award at the Webbies for Best New News Podcast and got Legal AF. We swept it on Legal AF. We got the committee award and the audience award. That's all because of this audience that we built together here at Midas Touch and on Legal AF. How to support this ecosystem? Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel, help get to 1.2 million subscribers. We will with your help in the next few days. We do 12 new videos a day. Come over to the Substack. I'm running a 40% sale to get us to 10,000 paid subscribers with you. It's the deepest discount we've ever done, and to celebrate our Webby win and all of that. And then, of course, we've got advertisers that want to speak to you that we've curated with Jordy and me on the Midas Touch Network and all that. And here's a word from them. Spring, it always reminds me how fast things are changing. Kids outgrowing their clothes, everything growing right in front of you. And it's a good reminder that as life grows, your responsibility to protect it grows too. That's why I've been looking at Policy Genius. It's not an insurance company. It's a marketplace that helps you find and buy insurance, making it easy to keep your coverage in step with your life. With Policy Genius, you can compare quotes from top insurers side by side for free. And their licensed team works for you, not the insurance companies. So you get guidance based on your needs. They help you find the most affordable policy, answer your questions, and handle the paperwork. They've also got thousands of 5-star reviews, which makes it easier to trust the process. Protect your family with a policy that grows with your life. With Policy Genius, you can see if you can find 20-year life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Head to policygenius.com/truth to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/truth. If you've ever searched for your name or address in Google, it's shocking to find out how many results have your personal information. And it's not by chance. Data brokers and people search sites collect your personal information. Your name, your address, your phone number, financial info, income, and hundreds of other records. They sell and share it publicly without your consent. But Incogni is here to put an end to that. You sign up, give them permission to act on your behalf, and they go out and demand that data brokers delete your personal info. You don't have to email anyone, fill out forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire data removal process for you. It doesn't just do that and walk away. Incogni also continuously monitors if your data is put back onto these databases, requesting repeated removals, keeping your data yours forever. Incogni has also launched a new feature called Custom Data Removals, available in their unlimited plan. It allows you to send in any link from any site that exposes your data, and then Incogni's privacy professionals will go after it. Not bots, no forms, just real people making your data disappear. Total legends. This is especially useful for removing records from places like legal databases or people search engines that don't play nice with traditional opt-outs. Right now, you can get 60% off their annual plans by heading to incogni.com/truth and using the code TRUTH at checkout. It's also completely risk-free. Incogni offers a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied with them removing your personal information off the internet. Live free from dangerous spam by using Incogni. That's incogni.com/truth for 60% off their annual plans. And welcome back. By the way, we are live. Now's the time as I bring Katie Fang on. If you want to ask questions of Katie or me or both, drop them in the chat. My team will scoop them up and we'll pick some to answer as we continue with the intersection. So I'm reading in my updates for the day about a new filing that just happened about the Epstein files. And I'm like, oh, this will be good. And I see at the top of the filing, Katie Fang versus Todd Blanche. God, there's no sweeter words that have ever been spoken than Katie Fang versus Todd Blanche. Let's bring in Katie Fang. Hi, Katie.
Wait, can we talk about that series of pictures of you like doing I'm trying to like pay attention to each one of them because I'm trying to catch the eyewear, the haircut, the beard, the facial hair. Like there's so many different iterations of Popok. I'm just trying to keep up and make sure I see what's going on.
Some of my ads and I'm like, I need a haircut on that one. That was one that I did without my beard. That's another pair. When you're a fashionista when it comes to eyewear too, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Sorry.
So we got questions. I know the audience will start asking soon.
Hi.
So let's before we get to, thank you for being here with me. I know you got a great live show over on the Katie Fang news channel that people should check out as well. Talk about you as a newsmaker, because it's one thing to be a journalist as you are, intrepid reporter, legal analyst, lawyer, and all of that. But to kind of cross over and say, gosh, by golly, I got to be the plaintiff in a federal case against the Department of Justice. Talk about that process.
Well, for what it's worth, my alert went off too the same way when I saw there was new litigation. I was like, oh, look, there's a new case. You know, I love this question, Michael, because actually nobody's asked me this per se. It's very unusual, as you know, as a lawyer, to be a litigant. We don't do that, right? We either represent a party or a litigant, or we represent somebody who maybe has an interest in the outcome of a case. But I felt like it was so compelling and important for me to do something proactive. And it wasn't out of just a desire to achieve transparency on the files. It's because it literally impacts my profession as a journalist. I cannot be able to report and explain things and describe things and pull on threads and do more investigation if I literally can't access the information. And the fact that it's rooted in just blatant, egregious noncompliance really chapped my ass. I was really upset. And so it involved a lot of kind of back and forth and a discussion about, what kind of exposure it would be and what it would take to do this lawsuit. But in the end, I felt like it was incredibly important because the Epstein files and reporting on it is a huge part of the work that I do as an independent journalist. And I refuse to allow myself to be deployed as pretty much a propaganda arm. If you think about it, Michael, when the federal government is controlling the spigot of information and the outflow of information, and they're controlling the way that it is being delivered, and then I, as a reporter or a journalist, take that information and pretty much regurgitate it without any further investigation or without any further analysis on it, I'm pretty much become just an extension of the DOJ in the Trump regime. And I'm like, nah, that doesn't work for me. And that's why we ended up suing.
Yeah, I mean, that is perfect. I mean, there were many types of people that could have brought this suit, but none did. And that's why I said when I first saw it, this is not only breathtaking, this is landmark, because it broke the glass ceiling, and finally is going to get to the bottom of a citizen, a reporter who, like you said, can't do her job because we're being spoon-fed information, probably half, if not less than half, of what should have been provided to us. And by spoon feeding, and think about it this way, and I know you do because you and I talked about this, by them spoon feeding us and us reporting on it, it's almost like we're complicit in the propaganda, right? We always have to say, well, this is only the tip of the iceberg, and we see an email and we see a person, but we don't know who the person is. But we also can't not report on it. So we're left. So they basically are manipulating the outflow by denying us the actual information, and enough is enough. And I love the line in the sand that you drawn with this lawsuit.
So here's the thing, Michael, like if Congress, and the thing is, I want to underscore this is a law. This is not some permissive moment in time where people get to individually decide in their minds how they want to interpret the law. This is a law. It was a bipartisan passed law that the felon Trump signed into law. And if they did not want certain information to be released, they would have created an enumerated restriction, which they did. And those restrictions that have been included in the law are to protect the identity and confidentiality of the victims and survivors, to prevent disclosure of national security information. But that's pretty much about it. They're very limited exceptions on disclosure. And conversely, you can't redact for fear of embarrassing or creating public humiliation or shame for individuals, politicians, the Donald Trumps of the world, and others, right? It's a very clear, very easy to read federal statute. And the DOJ has been in daily violation of that statute since December 19th, 2025. And that is months of violation of the statute. And in those months, remember, we were getting drip and drabs of stuff. Then we had this weird just dump of information, much of which was done improperly, albeit illegally. And then it's like, we're done. January comes around, we're done. We're not going to give you anything else. Sorry, we're done. And I'm like, nah, we're not done. I know we're not done because you've improperly redacted stuff. You've improperly retracted stuff, and you've pretty much violated the law. So I don't have to participate in this game. It hurts me in my profession. So I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah. Here's some questions from our audience tonight. Kevin Hogg, 2928, asks you, is there anything that the Midas Mighty can do to help your cause?
That is incredibly kind. Amplifying this lawsuit, continuing to voice your amazing support is incredibly helpful. I have been pleasantly surprised the amount of coverage that this lawsuit has achieved. I think, Michael, you were the one who pointed out yesterday, this is the first lawsuit that's been brought pursuant to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. So it is a first of its kind lawsuit. It's also the first time a journalist has sued, obviously, to get enforcement or compliance with it. At this point, just at this stage in the litigation, folks, just kind of talking about it and spreading the news and just kind of supporting the work that I'm doing is incredibly helpful. In fact, I will say, as a plaintiff in this case, part of the reason why I am the plaintiff is more than a third, if not more, of the work that I have done at Katie Fang News on YouTube and at Substack has been covering Epstein. It's been a huge part of the work I do. I have traveled to cover Epstein. I'm planning travel on Epstein-related things, including New Mexico. For those of you that have been following what's happened at Zorro Ranch, that is in my immediate event horizon. I have something involving Epstein next week in New York City. I mean, there's a lot that I am doing. And if you continue to provide support for the work that I am doing, that it most certainly actually helps this litigation, because it just further buttresses my argument that I have viewers, subscribers, and people that are interested in this information. I just can't give it to them because it continues to be hidden from us.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Our audience always looks for a call to action, something they can do to support what we're doing. And so, since you and I last spoke, do we have a judge yet who's assigned to this case?
We do. We have
who's your judge?
Senior Judge Emmett Sullivan.
Can we just take a moment and say that the gods have a great, not sense of humor, but a great cosmic justice, as just Hammett. This is the same judge who has Kash Patel's defamation case, right? And you got him for this Epstein transfer. Oh my God. Oh, chef's kiss. Mwah.
Emmett Sullivan also is somebody that we've been following for years because he was the presiding judge over Michael Flynn's case. If you'll recall, Michael Flynn had a criminal case for which he was prosecuted. And then, of course, when Trump got into office, what happened? Well, it was like first term Trump, right? It was like, oh, we're not going to prosecute him. We're not going to do it. And then he tried to vacate his guilty plea, if you recall. And Judge Sullivan's like, yeah, no, we don't do that. In fact, Judge Sullivan is the one who actually told Flynn that he betrayed his country. Because if you'll recall, it had to do with false statements, et cetera, that had to do with his involvement with Russia. And so Emmett Sullivan also, I think, in a related way that I think you guys would all be interested in knowing. So Emmett Sullivan was the judge that also presided over Senator Richard Blumenthal and other members of Congress. They sued pursuant to the Emoluments Clause in Trump Term 1.0. for the grift that was being perpetrated by Trump and his family and in violation of the Emoluments Clause. Now, Judge Sullivan allowed that case to proceed. The DC Circuit Court of Appeals, in my humble opinion, got it wrong and reversed it. But I do appreciate that case in particular, guys, because it was a standing issue and whether members of Congress had standing to be able to bring it. Standing is going to be a preliminary threshold issue that we will have to overcome. It is inevitable that Todd Blanche will file a motion to dismiss on the basis of standing, meaning, do I have the ability to even be a plaintiff in this case? And so that is definitely something I'm happy that we have Judge Sullivan for, because he knows the law and he knows the issue.
Oh, and a maverick judge who doesn't take any guff. I couldn't have wished you a better judge for this case than Emmett Sullivan. You're definitely going to get a fair shake. You're going to get your day in court. And
he's very strict too, in a good way.
Okay.
And we've seen, as I covered on my live before I joined you, Mike, James Comey spoke about the malevolence and the incompetence of the Trump DOJ. And when you get a judge like Emmett Sullivan, who is not afraid to go toe-to-toe with an administration or lawyers in an administration that don't know what the hell they're doing or are trying to play fast and loose, I am fortunate, because everybody will have to be prepared in this. And that is why I'm grateful that he will definitely call balls and strikes.
Yeah. And while I'm not going to let you leave just yet, you just brought up James Comey. So when you and I planned this tonight, it was before Comey got indicted over selling seashells
by the seashore.
Right. I mean, seriously. I mean, this
posting
is not
seashells by the seashore.
This is
How
not
many posts can he post without? I mean, I'm trying to find a good one. I'm trying to find a good one for him.
This is not a great travel promotional video for Outer Banks of North Carolina. Come for the long walks in the seashells and stay for the indictment.
Stay for the indictment.
But if you're a former prosecutor, right? And so you have a criminal. I'm a former.
I have a criminal mind. Yes,
criminal mind. I'm a defense lawyer by training and trade, and so. But you and I come at it. We end up at the same place.
Yes.
It's a page indictment. It's based on a social media post. It runs headlong into the Supreme Court precedent of Watson versus the United States, right? With Lyndon Johnson and the threat, which wasn't a threat. It was a First Amendment joke. It would take a joke, will you? And yet there they are with somber faces at a press conference. And before you joined, I said, I don't care how big the flag pin on Todd Blanche's lapel has grown to, or how many 3-piece or 4-piece suits Kash Patel wears. This is a piece of you-know-what. And Pat Fitzgerald, the lawyer for Comey, former U.S. attorney for Chicago, he must be laughing his ass off that this is what he has to shoot at. Oh, no pun intended. What do you think about
I think it's funny that you wouldn't call it a piece of shit, but then you just said laughing your ass off. I just want the record to reflect, Your Honor, that Mr. Popok would not call it a piece of shit, but he would say laughing your ass off.
Yeah.
So I have, of course, the indictment with me, because have indictment will travel. And because it's so thin and so flimsy, it's so easy to travel.
I was going to ask you, what's all the highlighting? The whole thing.
Well, I was furiously highlighting at the beginning, and then I was like, well, wait, this doesn't really merit anymore.
Right.
But I emphasize, and by the way, it tracks the language from the code, right? The actual federal statutes, right? But these are the particular phrases that I think are the death knell for this indictment. First of all, you have to make a threat, which never happened. But here we go. That a reasonable recipient would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm. I do not think that a reasonable recipient of an Instagram post of seashells would think that that is a serious expression of an intent to do harm.
No, wait. Does it change your mind if you also know that Kash Patel's FBI spent over a year Does it change your analysis that they spent
Todd,
a year
both
on
of
the
them had to
Instagram
say
post?
that at that presser. Both Todd Blanche and Kash Patel had to emphasize how long they worked since May of 2025 on this 1.5-page indictment, right? Because they had to let us believe that there is some credibility to this. I mean, it should be pretty galling on the same day that Lindsey Graham introduces legislation to give Donald Trump $400 million of taxpayer money and allows Donald Trump to keep the amount that's already been raised through private anonymous donors. That is how our money is being spent by prosecuting somebody over seashells. And here's the thing. There is no evidence that James Comey even put the seashells there, number one. And then number two, I would love to continue to give, which I shall, the grand jurors the benefit of the doubt that I do suspect that there is a Lindsey Halligan move afoot. What do I mean by that? Well, as we know, the first indictment in the Eastern District of Virginia for alleged false statements to Congress concerning James Comey was not only dismissed because of the illegal appointment of Lindsey Halligan as acting U.S. or interim U.S. attorney of EDVA, but as y'all recall, in an unprecedented thing, James Comey got his hands on the jury, the grand jury transcript and the proceedings that are usually confidential. And it revealed, obviously, that Lindsey Halligan had made affirmative misrepresentations about the law and the facts, the evidence, and the burden of proof as she secured that indictment. There were all the problems, too, with the vote, if you guys recall, too, whether they got the requisite votes or not. But the point is, I suspect we had the similar situation happen here in the Eastern District of North Carolina, which is I'm not quite sure how a jury returned a true bill, Mike, on this when it's over seashells.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And this is going to come down to motion practice that's going to be presented first to the judge that's been assigned to the case, who is Judge Louise Flanagan.
Yeah, she's a Bush appointee. She's a George W. She's a number 43 appointee.
Not MAGA.
But I want people to understand, Judge Flanagan had nothing to do with this.
No.
Meaning she didn't sanction this indictment. She didn't bring it. She didn't okay it. She's just been assigned to the case.
And to your point, we'll have to see what prosecutor was used for this, because it certainly wasn't Todd Blanche. But to your point, Lindsey Halligan violated the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment in her presentation to the grand jury. If it hadn't been tossed for the illegality of her appointment, it likely would have been tossed for violations of, how do you violate both the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment? Because I remember she turned on its head. She led the grand jury to believe that Comey had an obligation to testify and waive his Fifth Amendment privilege, which of course is completely wrong about the burden of proof. So let's get the transcript, then they'll make their motion. And I think that this is grounds, I want to get your opinion, for a malicious prosecution motion. And you start from Lindsey Halligan. See, I actually thought you and I were going to be reporting on something else about James Comey. I thought he was going to get swept up with Joe DeGeneva in
the Southern District of Florida thing with the Brennan stuff. Yeah.
In the grand conspiracy, which has got a grand jury in D.C. and one in Fort Pierce. I thought we were going to hear about an indictment coming out of there against him.
I thought it was another run at the EDVA. Honestly, I thought it was another bullshit false statements to Congress run. I never would have thought it was over seashells. Like, I definitely did not anticipate this one coming. Look, and by the way, we really do need to keep our eye on that John Brennan one out of the Southern District of Florida that's being done by another Trump lackey, Jason Redding, whatever his hell.
Quinones.
Whatever. Redding. The Quinones came out of the blue. We all know that. He was also Jason Redding for so long, and then it came out of the blue.
Wasn't he Judge Redding when he was on the Miami Circuit Court? Or maybe he's probably Judge Quinones.
I actually think he was county court too. I don't think he was circuit.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But either way, I will say this. The malicious prosecution, vindictive prosecution, I think it's worthwhile sharing with everybody. It is a virtually impossible burden threshold, right, to meet legally. And yet we have seen way more vindictive prosecution, malicious prosecution motions that I've seen in my legal career happened because of this Trump DOJ.
Well, any day now, Judge Crenshaw is going to issue his ruling in Abrego Garcia.
Kilmer Abrego Garcia, right?
'Cause that's
100%.
all done. It's all done except for
100%.
the order.
100%.
And I think he's going to do it.
There has been more proactive discussions of sanctions, contempt, etc. In my legal career that I have been a lawyer for almost 30 years now, I have never heard this much chatter about contempt and sanctions ever until now.
Yeah.
Until this regime.
But to prove my earlier theory, Trump knows this wasn't about an indictment that'll actually stick or lead to a conviction.
It's the process, honey.
Right.
It's the pain of the process.
Right.
It's the payment of criminal defense fees. It's the stress and anxiety. It's the humiliation if it exists. Although I will say, Comey, man, that man has a serious poker face.
Bring it. And just to round it out here before we let you go, Maureen Comey there was a good day for Comey, and Maureen Comey convinced the federal judge that her being vindictively dismissed as a career apolitical prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. She was the one that brought Ghislaine Maxwell to justice, prosecutor for Epstein, but she got Loomered. Laura Loomer decided that she was the daughter of James Comey and she couldn't have her own career. And so she got fired. And then when she brought her vindictive prosecution, her vindictive dismissal case, Trump actually had the balls to say, oh, no, you should go through the Merit Systems Protection Board or the National Labor Relations Board. You mean the two entities you destroyed and there aren't anymore?
Well, what I thought was spectacular about Judge Furman's order and opinion today, greenlighting her case against the DOJ in that space, right, in that federal court, was the intentionality behind Judge Furman writing all of the complimentary things about the sterling reputation of Maureen Comey, because she fits the definition of being summarily dismissed. I mean, she literally was dismissed by way of an email that invoked the executive powers of the president to be able to allegedly do what he did. The thing that really gets me is twofold. One, I am grateful for that win for Maureen Comey. I think it opens the floodgates for other people who are also illegally terminated to chase down their justice, number one. Number two, I think it also, what it effectively does is reinforce the following, which is the timing of her termination speaks directly to the deployment of Todd Blanche to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, because he went less than a week after she was fired. And Maureen Comey was the lead trial prosecutor in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell in the criminal case of Jeffrey Epstein. And she knew those cases. She knew that evidence better than anybody. And she would have been the natural, logical person to send to do the limited immunity Queen for a Day meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, because she would have known her bullshit meter would have been powerful, right? And she would have been able to say, you're lying, Ghislaine. I know what the evidence is, right? But they intentionally sent dumbass Blanche because Todd is the perfect patsy for it, because he knows that if he goes in blind, he doesn't sit there and he can't gauge the truth. He's just going to sit there and, like I said, do each other's nail and braid each other's hair is what they were doing. And then he said, oh, check the box, met with her. Now she can go to Club Fed. Which is why I like this illegal termination lawsuit, because I think there's a colorable argument, Michael, that Comey's lawyers could explore the why, right, of it. And maybe there is an Epstein link to it. Yeah. I think it exists. I think all roads are leading back to Epstein on this one.
Look, you and I have agreed from the very beginning. She was the sacrificial lamb to get her out of the way, so that when, as you said, when Blanche went and did the interview, he didn't have her as an earworm in his ear saying she's lying to you, because he didn't want to know if she was lying to him, because that's not his purpose of going to interview. You know, the 5-year prosecutor for the case who knows every document like the back of her hand and every witness statement you don't bring to the meeting. Now, while I've got you, I love abusing my friendship with you. While I've got you, what did you make of Judge Williams in the Southern District of Florida and her decision that maybe we don't have adversariness between Donald Trump suing his own Internal Revenue Service for billions of dollars, and she wants briefing on it? Because I know you know Williams the way I know her. Give me your thoughts on that.
So it was delicious, right? Because it was so quintessential Judge Kathleen Williams. And for those of you that don't know, Judge Kathleen Williams, an exceptional member of the judiciary here in the Southern District of Florida, came from being the federal public defender in the Southern District of Florida. So if there's anybody who knows her way around a courtroom, who knows evidence, who knows the rules of procedure, and who understands trial law, it would be somebody like Judge Williams. But she has been intrepid with the Trump administration in calling things out. She's also been intrepid in calling things out with the DeSantis administration here in Florida. All of the fantastic rulings we received to shut down Alligator Alcatraz, the concentration camp in the Everglades, those came from Judge Williams. So it was not a surprise, Michael, to see that it was Judge Kathleen Williams who distilled everything into what we all know, which is going on, which is you can't sue yourself because you're going to settle with yourself. You can't sue the IRS for $10 billion and then pretend like you're a party in controversy when you sit there and you settle with yourself. I thought it was a thing of beauty. Yeah. And I wasn't surprised that it was Judge Williams because you know what the Spanish phrase is for those of you that speak Spanish with us right now? It is yo no tengo or no hay pelo en mi lengua. I don't have hair on my tongue. That means right. She does not suffer fools. And she's right. like, no hay pelo en mi lengua. I'm going to call it for what it is. There is no controversy here. There is no conflict here. You better explain to me how y'all are not just negotiating with each other to be able to pay yourselves $10 billion.
And my favorite part of it is when she ordered them to file separate briefs. Like, you can't even do a joint brief, folks. You got to be separate briefs.
You have to pretend. You have to pretend like there's daylight between you people in doing it.
Now, let me play it out for our audience, not for you. If she finds there's no case in controversy and there's no lawsuit, then he's lost the consideration for the exchange for the settlement. And therefore, it's just a robbery of the Internal Revenue Service by Donald Trump of billions of dollars because it can't be couched as in consideration for a settlement of a legitimate lawsuit because there is no legitimate lawsuit. Ta-da!
Ta-da! and it's interesting, though, because I'm sure you all have noticed, because you guys are all so smart, there has been a series of settlements that have been entered into with Trump-adjacent loyalists like Flynn, for example, and others that I think is kind of another example of how he knows how to instill loyalty by way of fear or loyalty by way of grift. You are either the beneficiary of his largesse because you get some crazy settlement, or his DOJ will step aside and enter into a settlement with Ashley Babbitt's estate, for example, right? Or they will be on the lookout for a settlement with the Proud Boys. They sued for like $100 million or something wackadoo in Florida. Like, there's this type of litigation that's going on, kind of like the pardon cottage industry, right? This pay to play thing. There's this whole slew of litigation and a slew of stuff that's going on that is just a, quote, legal pathway for people that are in Trump's orbit to make money and to grift off of us as American taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love having you here on the show. You got to come back more often on The Intersection. Katie Phang, the Katie Phang News Channel. You can catch it on YouTube. We do crossover episodes as well. Got to get you back on my Substack and vice versa. Midas contributor out in the field. If May Day is coming up, May 1, Law Day.
Yeah, May Day, yes.
You and I are going to try to do something around that as well. So happy to have you here. So happy to have you as a colleague and always, of course, as a friend. I didn't know you were in the upholstery business. What's with this beautiful old sign behind you?
So this is actually my husband's late grandfather's. It's a picture of the store that he had in Flushing. Here, let me know if I can show it to you guys like that.
Wow.
And so what we did was we took this old picture and we kind of colorized it.
So great.
And then we made it into this very much like larger centerpiece. And it's kitschy, but it also reminds,
Oh.
obviously, my husband of his late grandfather, his bubby, his
Yeah,
late
that's
grandfather.
so
So,
great. And I got to
yeah.
talk. We got to go out to dinner. I want to talk to your husband because my grandfather owned a woman's silk stocking factory. He
Well,
made
that was very much the
yeah,
immigrant,
he
the
made
the
hosiery. He
the
made
big
hosiery. Yeah,
his my husband's family on his father's side, which is where this was
yeah,
a very big Russian Jewish
yeah.
immigrant story. And being in the garment industry was a very big part of that Russian Jewish immigrant story when they came to the United
I'm
States.
sure it's very similar. That grandfather I just talked about, he dropped out of school in the 6th grade. He was pushing a cart on the Lower East Side, okay, and eventually owned the largest dye works for ladies' stockings in the United States. Now, by the way, my late mother, I never could figure out how he went from push cart to factory. I know the stories, but there's a big gap that I don't know how he went from there to there. I just know it happened.
Well,
So,
people in the chat are all chiming in that my family owned clothing factories. My grandfather made
yeah,
shoulder pads. I mean, the most important thing about this is it is the immigrant story, right? It's the
yeah.
reason why we have such a great story, and all of us have stories to tell about our families that way. So,
Absolutely. We're
yeah.
all close to our families. Really appreciate you being here, my friend.
Thanks for having
And
me,
good luck in your
everybody.
lawsuit and
Thanks. I'll keep you guys posted. Yes.
anything we can do or I can do or anybody can do, you know we got your back. Katie Fang News Channel. Thanks for being
Oh,
here.
well, thanks, guys. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. All right. So we're in the home stretch. Let's do a couple more things that I wanted to cover before we get done with the intersection. And don't forget a little bit of a programming note. I'm going to be on with Mark Elias tomorrow, Democracy Docket, for a great interview about redistricting and maps and some of these other things that we've talked about tonight. I've got the American Civil Liberties Union coming on about the attack and the First Amendment attack against ABC and Jimmy Kimmel. I'll be hitting that interview tomorrow. We've got the Legal AF podcast tomorrow night. It's Karen Friedman, Ignifilo, and me on the Midas Touch Network, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturday, the Legal AF podcast, of course, with Ben Meiselas and me. All right, let me just go over just a couple of more things. In the ballroom matter, Donald Trump, fresh off of exploiting the averted disaster at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, decided that, it's all about the ballroom. So they filed I don't even want to dignify it by calling it a proper motion. They filed a piece of paper that looked like it was dictated literally by Donald Trump himself with like a late night social media post. Capital letters and third person references and all, in which the first paragraph has nothing to do with anything about the ballroom, but just attacks the National Trust and its name, and then goes on to talk about how that while the court they filed the piece of paper in, Judge Leon has no jurisdiction because Trump filed an appeal which automatically cuts off the jurisdiction of the trial court. We know we're in the wrong court, Judge. But while we have you, you should reverse your injunction because we need the ballroom now and every day there's delay. All right, let's back up. He already got the block on the injunction. The appellate court panel currently is allowing the ballroom, its foundation, its top secret military installation and hospital to be built. It's being built even now while we're live, and it's going to be built tomorrow and all the way through May or June while we're waiting for the appellate court after full briefing to render its decision. So this argument that they need Judge Leon today to do anything is a lie because there is no injunction in place. It's been blocked already, but they want him to permanently dissolve the injunction so it doesn't have to be appealed, except the statute or the civil procedure rule that they're relying on, for those that are playing the I want to be a lawyer home game, Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 62.1, this is not a proper motion under 62.1, but it never was intended to be. It's just a political screed social media post masquerading as a filing to try to draw attention and get more momentum for the ballroom now that the senator from Pennsylvania has, Mr. Sweatpants has been heard from, John Fetterman, about Trump derangement syndrome. They actually quote him. Trump derangement syndrome is on the rise. Senator Fetterman says it so. That's not a legal doctrine, the Trump derangement syndrome. And it doesn't make your ballroom any, to be entitled to the ballroom any more today than it was the day before or an hour before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's not the justification for an unsecured hotel where the White House correspondents held their dinner. Trump has to, what's he going to do? He's just going to stay in the ballroom for the duration of his administration? I guess that if we put rubber padding in the room, that probably makes sense. I don't understand. He has to get out of the White House. He's not in a Pope mobile. He's going to have no more rallies, no more Fox News appearances, no more White House dinners. I don't understand. He's 3 years away from getting the ballroom up and running. He's just going to go into hiding. I thought that was the problem with Joe Biden during COVID, that he campaigned from a basement. They're just going to put him in the basement. This whole argument makes absolutely no sense because it was never intended to. So I'm sure that the lawyers for the National Trust are going to file an opposition paper, probably have already. I just haven't had a chance to check. And then Judge Leon is going to deny this motion. But if you wanted to file it, you thought it had merit, go file it with the appellate court. Wrong court, guy. Let me catch you up quickly here at the end about maps. Maps, right? It's like a drinking game. Every time we talk about maps, take a drink. Two major map issues, one in Florida, one in Virginia. Virginia, a week ago tonight, 3 million people went to the polls and they agreed to let their legislature redo their maps. That was a relatively simple referendum voted on by the people, as opposed to what Texas did in the middle of the night with their state house with no voter approval. And what you see the difference. Republicans just do things in the middle of the night with a rubber stamp state house. Democrats go to the polls. California, people voted. Virginia, people voted. So Virginia voted, and the yes vote won by 3 or 4 points. Now, the Republican National Committee, which is controlled by Donald Trump, ran to court and got somebody in Tazewell, I think it's Tazewell, Virginia, a red part of Virginia, to issue an injunction to stop the certification of the election results. That sound familiar? And the Virginia Attorney General's office ran to the Virginia Supreme Court, a 7-judge panel, justice panel, and argued that that injunction should be lifted and the vote should be certified. Now, as of we came on the air, Virginia Supreme Court said they're not going to lift the injunction because I guess they're afraid if the vote gets certified, the wet cement just hardened. So they're going to fully brief the appeal and make a quick decision. My gut is they're not going to overturn the will of the people and find that they voted in vain. So I think that map survives, which gives Democrats +4. Florida leapt into action with Ron DeSantis and decided to turn the entire state red and to give the Republicans 24 red seats against 4 blue seats, at least in their mind, at least mentally. Do we have the full red map with the 4 little blue dots? Except that's not how it really works. I'm in Florida. That's not how it really works because they've miscalculated the Hispanic vote, which is turned on Donald Trump like he's radioactive, right? Like a kid who pooped in the pool. They are running away from him. And their vote is important in Florida along the I-4 corridor, Orlando and Tampa, across the state, Alligator Alley, left and right, up and down the coast from West Palm down to Miami. Hispanic vote controls. And if they abandon Donald Trump, there's very good speculation that the new map, which has been, if it hasn't been approved, it will be by the rubber stamp of the State House in Tallahassee, it could lead not to 24-4 Republicans, could be 17-11, right? 16-12, because they've miscalculated and they've spread the red voters so thin in this remapping that it's put at risk what was once safe seats. See, the Democrats have a good word for this process. It's called dummy mandering, right? I just saw a clip from future Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, who said it's just dummy mandering where you're trying to squeeze out more Republican votes, and all you're doing is manufacturing more Democratic seats. So this could be the last two to try to remap Virginia and Florida. Florida's will be challenged because they have a state constitution, fair districts amendment that the people of the state of Florida voted on that said you can't gerrymander. You can't redraw your districts to benefit a party for partisan reasons. So Ron DeSantis's attorney general says, well, it also said racial, and that violates the U.S. Constitution, so throw the whole thing out. I don't think that's how that kind of referendum works or that kind of amendment works. So we're going to have multiple lawsuits about Florida's map. That'll start at the Florida Supreme Court, which frankly is controlled by DeSantis people. It's 7 Florida Supreme Court justices, 6 of which have been appointed by DeSantis over his 2 terms. And then it'll probably end up at the United States Supreme Court, as will Virginia's eventually. We got primaries that are like starting any minute now, July and August in some places. And we're still waiting, just to be complete in my analysis, we're still waiting for a U.S. Supreme Court decision called Calais out of Louisiana, which will come anytime now, May, June, no later than June, which, if it turns the Voting Rights Act on its head, which we think it will, could lead to some more attempted remapping. And when we're talking about remapping, it's just Republicans trying to grab some seats, steal some seats they could never earn on their own, and to try to give Trump and MAGA an advantage at the midterms for the House vote. That's all it is. It's to try to start the game with 10 points up on the board before the ball is even tossed in the air. That's what we're watching. And we will, the reason we focus on it, the reason I joined Mark Elias on Democracy Docket for an interview that goes up tomorrow, is because we've got to talk about it. We've got to platform it. Everybody that meets me, that comes on my show, or I go on there, says the same thing. The Midas Mighty, the legal AFers, the intersectionists are very powerful when they are yoked together for a common cause to protect our democracy. And it starts here with information, with knowledge, to help you in the public square of ideas, to help you learn about voting and voting rights and make sure your vote is protected. And it ends in the ballot. It ends with voting. And together, we will protect this democracy. I'll do my part, and I know that this audience will do theirs. I'm so pleased to have you here with me. It's a great honor to appear in front of you hourly on the Legal AF YouTube channel, right? Where you can become a subscriber and help us get to 1.2 million subscribers and give us that street credibility we need to continue to grow. And then Legal AF Substack, what a community. I do a live report every day around 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we have amazing content that you can only find on Legal AF Substack. We're trying to get to paid membership of 10,000 paid members. I'm running a 40% discount sale, my steepest discount yet, to encourage you to join us in this mission. It's time for everybody to kind of jump in here together. So until tomorrow night, Legal AF YouTube, podcast on the Midas Touch Network, and all the work that we do every moment, every hour over on Legal AF YouTube channel. This is Michael Popok. Shout out to the Midas Mighty, the Legal AFers, and the intersectionists. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.